Hello! In this tutorial I want to go over how I went about detailing the normal maps for the space station environment using NDO. I'll be going over the different ways you can create normals using NDO, such as sculpting and 3D painting. Alright, so before we get started with actually detailing a mesh from the environment, I want to show you the basics of NDO. And if we click the NDO icon up here in the top left of the Suite launcher, we get the NDO UI here. And if we click the Launch NDO Project Creator, we get this window in which you can plug in your mesh and it's baked normal, or you can just set up a flat texture. And I'll set the resolution here to 1024, and I will specify a path here to save it. Create a new folder called tutorial and save it in here. Next, I'll click Create New Project. And here we go, we have a flat normal here. And what I'll do is I'll create two different shapes here. First, I'll create a rectangle. And if I hover over the UI with a selection, it's gonna ask me if I want to convert my selection to a normal, which I do, so I'll click this. And once I've done that, I can create a new layer, select the brush tool, and just stamp out. And now it's gonna ask me if I want to convert my brush to a normal, which I do. So once again, I'll click the convert button here, and it's gonna create a normal from my shape or from my brush. And up here we have a lot of different options. So the first one here is a shape. The chiseled one creates sharp bevels, while the this one makes them smooth. So if we zoom in here on this, we can see the difference between them all. I'll go back to smooth for now. And the next one, the bevel, also changes the appearance quite a lot. So the inner looks like this. The outer is quite different. It creates a very hard edge here in the center. And the emboss makes it softer. So I'll go with the inner for this, which is the default one. And actually one bevel type that's very useful is the groove one. And it looks like this. It's very handy when creating panels and stuff like that that has the appearance of going inwards before it goes up again, instead of having to create two different layers, one going in and one going out. So I use this all the time, but for now I'll just go back to the inner, which is the default one. The slant, you can toggle between up and down, and as you can see here, now it goes down and now it goes up. And then we have a curve, which can affect the profile of the normal detail. And lastly, we have the blend mode, in which it works just like Photoshop's. You can select the overlay, and it's going to overlay on top of the other ones, and you can go with linear light and so on. So I'll set this to overlay, so you can see the effect here. Next, we have the size, which does exactly what it sounds. It just adjusts the size of your normal detail. I'll set mine to around 13 here, yeah. And next one is depth, and it controls the strength and the softness of the normal. So if we decrease this, you can see the effect here. It makes it softer here, and it also makes it a bit weaker. The contrast only adjusts the normal's strength. So if we reduce this, we can see the effect here. Opacity adjusts the transparency of the layer or of the detail. Just like the opacity, you can see here, if we adjust the opacity here, it's going to adjust the opacity of the group here. The softness adjusts the smoothness or softness of your layer. The plane fill adjusts the transparency of all the parts of a normal that's flat. So if we set this back to normal and we adjust the plane fill, you can see the flat surface on top of the normal here becomes completely transparent. The fall off controls the normal's curve, which makes it more sharp or more relaxed. I'll set it back to around 50% where it's default. And at the bottom of the UI, we have a bunch of buttons as well, such as the zip mode, which is very handy when if I'm done with this, I'm happy with this, I can just click the zip icon here, and it's gonna optimize the group so that it's a lot better for performance. and also reduces the file size of the PSD. The Sculpt mode allows you to go into Sculpt mode to make changes, to make additions, to move stuff around. I'll go over this in just a minute. And you can add a new Sculpt layer, such as this one, or a new multi-normal. We'll go over these ones as well in just a couple of minutes. And you can delete the currently selected layer or normal. And you can also access the settings here, as well as force refreshing 3Do, the previewer. Right, so let's take a look at how to create normals in some more ways. So there are two modes here, or two buttons here. It's a Sculpt layer and it's a multi-normal layer. So the first one here, the new Sculpt layer, creates a layer in which you can paint directly in your document. So I can use the brush tool and I can paint away. I can create a selection, fill that, and so on. And the good thing about this is, for example, you could paint out bolts like this, increase the softness, increase the size a bit, and I could just select this and move it around on my texture. You can also access the Sculpt mode from a layer created using another method, such as converting a selection. As you can see, the colors are a little bit off here, but this will be changed or corrected once I exit the Sculpt mode. So now it's a true normal. And if I go back, we're going to go back to the Sculpt mode type normals. And you can adjust the parameters while in Sculpt mode. All of them. It's just like working with a regular layer. So I can change the slant, for example, while I'm in the Sculpt layer, and so on. So let's exit Sculpt mode and delete this layer, and we'll take a look at the other kind of layer. So the multi-normal is very similar to the Sculpt layer, except that you don't get the preview type normals, you get the true normals straight away. So you can use selections, as I just showed you, you can use the brushes, you can even use text and shapes. So now I added some text here, and I can also create a new layer within the stack and start painting away. And the parameters here affect all the layers within the multi-normal. And you can also access the NDO painter mode here by using a multi-normal. So if I check this, it will open up 3Do and it's going to open up the painting tab. And now in this mode, I can simply paint away. This will create a mask. I press Shift Space and it's going to convert that selection or mask to a normal. There we go. So now that you've seen the basics of NDO, let's move on to actually detailing something from the space station. There are several ways you can create normals in NDO, as well as different normal types. I thought I'd go over a couple of them while detailing a model I have here, which is an airlock for my space station. And what I'll do is I'll launch the project creator and specify my mesh here. And this will show me the mesh groups, but in this case there's only one. And what I'll also do is I'll load in my baked normal. There we go. And back here we can preview the map I just plugged in. And down here we can specify where I want to save it, and this looks fine to me. And I'll go ahead and create the new project. There we go. So let's open up 3Do and look at the mesh with the normal applied. So as you can see, the actual door here is pretty flat, it's pretty boring. And what I want to do is I want to add some sort of indentations or lines going radially across the surface here. And as I said before in the beginning, there are several ways you can create normals, and I thought I'd show you a couple of ways you can do that. So the first one, let me just set the post processes up so that it looks a bit prettier. So I'll enable sharpness and high quality resampling, some SSAO, and just a physical camera. There we go. So the first one is to paint directly onto your model in 3D. So to do that, I'll create a new multi-normal using this button here. And this reveals a checkbox. And if you check that, it's going to bring you into the painting mode in 3Do. And there we go. So as you can see here, up in the left here, there's a tab called Painting. And you have several different options here, such as the toggle between brush and eraser, the brush browser, opacity, color, and symmetry, and so on. But for this detail, we're just going to be using the default brush. But just so you can see here, there's a lot of different brushes you can use, such as damage, cracks, grunge, basic shapes, and so on. But as I said, we'll be using the default brush here. So let me increase the size a bit and the opacity. So to increase and decrease the size of your brush, you simply hold down B and right mouse button. Let me just size the window up a little bit. There we go. So hold B, right mouse button, and drag it to increase and decrease the size. And if you have a non-radial brush or a brush that's got some shapes to it, you can hold down, well, you can do it with this as well. You can hold down B and left mouse button to rotate. Let me just select another brush so I can show you. There we go. So hold down B and left mouse button and it's gonna rotate. And if you hold B and middle, B and left and right, you can adjust the opacity by sliding up and down. So let's go back to the basic brush here. So this is just one of the ways. And I'll simply set the size to a good size here. And I'll also decrease the spacing a little bit. So I'll click up here, and while holding Shift, I'll click down here to create a straight line between the two strokes. And what you see here is the mask, the normal mask. And to convert that to a normal, simply press Shift Space. And that's gonna take this mask and convert it to a normal. There we go. And if you hold N, as in normal, on your keyboard, you can remove the preview of the mask. So in this case, I want to increase the size by quite a lot. So let's try around 30. And change the slant to down so that it goes inwards. All the changes you make here are completely non-destructive and can be changed at any time, even after zipping. I want to increase the size a little bit more. There we go. And what I can do now that I have these parameters all set up, I can simply click on the mesh and do the same thing over here. And once again, click or press Shift Space. And there we go. And to leave the paint mode, simply uncheck the NDO Painter mode checkbox here. And if we close down 3Do, we can see the detail on the texture here. So that's one of the ways you can create a normal. The other way of going about this is to simply use a sculpt layer. So what I'll do is I'll click this button here, add new sculpt layer, which will create a new group here. And here, I'll make sure my brush tool is selected, make sure it's a hard brush, set the opacity to 100, and I'll just click up here, hold down Shift, and click down here. What I'll do next is I'll change the slant to down, increase the size, up the softness, and up the size a little bit more, something like that. Looks good. And what I'll do is I can either select this, move it over here, rotate it, because the orientation will be correct in tangent space, no matter how you orient it. So I can do this, and to add more, I can simply keep clicking like before. So once I leave sculpt mode, it's going to convert to a regular normal. And there we go. And as you might have noticed, once I left the sculpt mode, it automatically zipped the group. Okay, so let's say I want to improve this normal map even further before taking it into NDO for texturing. And I want to add some scratches and like dents and just roughen it up a little bit to make it a bit worn. And these details will be added later on, or will be used later on by NDO, and NDO will apply normals on top of that. So this will just be a base, and what I have here is just a photograph that I loaded in, a grayscale photograph. And with this selected, I'll just convert that, clicking here, and this will create a very, very basic normal here. But I will use this as a base. So what I'll do is I will increase the size, increase the softness, reduce the depth by quite a lot, and set the overlay or blending mode to overlay. And what I'm doing here is I'm trying to get a nice soft base, and that's what I usually like to do. Just making a very, very soft base with some slight variations. So let's preview this. So it's still a bit too much. So what I'll do is I'll increase the size even more. We're getting there. And I want to reduce the contrast. Something like that. So it's very, very subtle, and that's exactly how I want it. So very, very small dents. So let's jump back into Photoshop here. And with the NDO window selected, I can click or press Ctrl D to duplicate the layer. And what I'll do now is, well, of course, first I want to zip this underlying layer to save some performance. Next, I'll go back into this new one, and I'll reduce the size to around 1. Drag the softness down, increase the contrast and the depth as well. So now we're getting some nice sharp details here, but it's still too much. So what I'll do is I'll once again tweak the depth. So what I did before was I just tried to get back to a good starting point. Now I want to tweak it. So that's usually how I work when I convert photos to normal. So instead of just relying on the first result that I get when I convert, I like to create several layers with like large details, small details, smaller details, and so on. So I think we're getting there. I'll reduce the opacity a bit, as well as the depth. So we zoom in here, we're getting some very, very small, nice details. And we can see here, very subtle, but I want them even more subtle actually. Something like that. Maybe even less. Yeah, that's gonna work. Alright, so let's go back and see if we can get some more information from this photograph that we want to use. So let's reset the settings or pull them back up a bit. And let's check out the different bevel modes here. This one I like. We're getting the large details here by playing with the fall off. So if I drag this down, we can see the smaller details disappearing. So drag it back up here, and you can see the details over here will disappear or get less noticeable. So I really like this. I like these large sort of bumps. I can toggle the layer on and off so we can see them more clearly. Let's see if there's some more stuff we can, yeah, down here as well. Yes, I really like this. Let's preview that. Yeah, that's really cool. So we got some very, very soft, subtle base with some slight variations in the surface. We got this small, soft scratches here and there, and we got the bumps. I'm really happy with this. This technique is extremely useful for getting very rich details from any type of photo source, and NDO is completely unique in this area. I hope you learned something from this tutorial, and keep your eyes open for upcoming videos in this tutorial series. See you next time!